Moment of silence. Hello guys, Void here, coming back at you all with another top 10 video. This time we're going to be looking at the top 10 best Simic colored cards in the Commander format. Now, as always, we're going to be starting it off here with the honorable mentions. First one we have is Vorel of the Hullclade. Used to be a very popular Commander option before we had some of the newer ones that come out around 2015, and see some play as a Commander even now, which a lot of Simic cards deal with +1/+1 counters on creatures, so it just kind of stand out. But other than that, I don't really think Vorel is one of the more popular Commander options in these colors. So for now, he's just an honorable mention. And then we have the 3 Planeswalkers in these colors, which I don't think that they're bad. I just think that they're all pretty average. They don't really stand out too well. Both of the Kioras, if you get to their ults, you're just going to get gigantic octopus, kraken creatures, and I mean, that's kind of cool, but the other abilities are rather small. Getting extra mana maybe a little bit, maybe some more card draw. It's nothing too exciting. It's not terrible, but again, it is pretty average. There's not really a lot of removal here or anything that you would typically want in a multiplayer format. You want to have some sort of control, and just drawing cards and getting a little bit of extra mana it's not terrible, but it's not spectacular at the same time. And even the new Nissa, yes, an X-costed Planeswalker is kind of neat, but her ult is rather weak. It's pretty insignificant in this format. Her 0 is kind of cool if you can get lucky there. You can get something onto the field. Her plus is just Scry 2, which doesn't technically draw you any cards, but I guess it's cool top deck manipulation. All of these are pretty average, and that's why they're just honorable mentions. The next we have Keitel, Chosen of Krufix, one of the partner commander options. Love this commander. I think that she works well with Vial Smasher the Fierce if you want to make sort of a wheel and deal type of strategy. Very much like a Nekosar deck. I think it works out pretty well. Also nets you a ton of mana if you're able to draw a lot of cards off of windfall effects. That's pretty cool. But it is colorless mana, so unless you have a way to filter all of that, it's not going to help you out too much. Extra mana is never bad, even if it is generic, but again, the fact that it is colorless limits you to maybe the hopes of getting out an Eldrazi Titan. So for now, she is just an honorable mention until we can get partner commanders in the future that work even better with her. She is pretty promising though. And then we have Experiment Crash. Works pretty well with activated abilities. The only downside to this is the fact that it is Simic and you don't have all of these options among creatures in the activated ability department. So ideally what you want to do here is build a deck around them where you have just a ton of activated abilities such as Arcanus the Omnipotent. Tap to draw 3 cards. That's just one of them that comes to mind. Put a +1/+1 counter on it, and Experiment Crash also taps to draw you 3 cards. That's pretty cool. Or you could use it on something like a Priest of Titania to then tap for a bunch of mana if you also have elves that tap for mana as well. That wouldn't be a terrible synergy to abuse. But again, a big downside here is the fact that it is creature activated abilities with +1/+1 counters, and the likeliness of depending on your opponents to have good creatures with activated abilities isn't really the premise for a good commander deck. So you kind of want to focus entirely on your deck, which is kind of limited in Simic colors, but still worthy of an honorable mention because he is still a pretty popular commander in these colors. Then we have one of the newer cards, Tishana, Voice of Thunder from Ixalan. Now the huge comparison here is with Prime Speaker Zagana. They're both merfolk. However, I think Prime Speaker Zagana is a little bit better because it is a lot easier to get out creatures with any power and toughness that's significant enough to draw the cards versus just getting a high number of creatures out there. And Tishana is better in more of a go wide strategy for the obvious reason you can draw a lot more cards. If there is any upside to playing Tishana over Prime Speaker, it would probably be the fact that you have no maximum hand size. The power and toughness fluctuating based on the number of cards in your hand is a bit of a pain. So in all honesty, that's why I think she just got edged out here, just in the honorable mentions. So now we move on to the actual top 10. Number 10 is Prime Speaker Zagana. I think that she is just a tad bit better than Tishana. Only 6 mana, but the mana is a little bit more specific to green and blue, so keep that in mind. However, I think that is a big difference though. 6 mana. When she enters the battlefield, she enters with X +1/+1 counters, where X is the greatest power among your other creatures. So if you have another creature out there, let's just say 4 power, she enters with 4 +1/+1 counters, and then you get to draw cards equal to her power. So then you draw 5 cards, and you also get a creature with 5 power and toughness for 6 mana. So you get a 5/5, you draw 5 cards, all for 6 mana. That's a pretty good deal. Compared to Tishana, I think that it's a little bit easier to get this and pull it off. And the power and toughness, you don't really have to worry about it changing too much, because it's a lot harder to get rid of +1/+1 counters than it is to decrease and increase hand size. That's the main reason why I chose Agana as the number 10 slot over Tishana. Number 9 is Edric, Spymaster of Trest, a longtime commander option from the original Commander set. This guy's very political and one of those early commander options that really made you think about the interactions with other players and how you can persuade others to side with you. And a good way to do that is offer them card draw by attacking your other opponents. So whenever your opponents are dealt combat damage, they get to draw a card. As well as you, if you attack your opponents as well and you deal combat damage, you also get to draw those cards. So this is very much what I like to see in Commander, cards like these that sit on the field and they impact the game in a way that benefits you without really even instigating too much. You're not really painting a target on yourself. All you're doing is just offering a little bit of card draw. Now, throw this into something like a group hug deck if you want to. I think it works pretty well there. You could also throw it into control for the same exact reason. You want to be less of a target, and I think Edric does a good job of making you less of a target. Making friends in a political game such as Commander is never a bad thing, and that is why he made this top 10 list, because I like that aspect in Commander. Number 8 is Progenitor Mimic, one of my favorite clones in this entire format. Very underrated for 6 mana. Enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the field. However, at the beginning of your upkeep, you get a token copy of that same creature. So if you choose to copy something gigantic, like say a Craterhoof Behemoth for instance, I mean that's going to likely win you the game. If you copy something like a Terrastodon and get a ton of removal there on ETB, that is just fantastic. It works well in Flicker decks for the same exact reason. You get to just abuse the heck out of all of these ETBs. You can abuse the ETBs of your opponent's creatures by copying them. Just a fantastic card, unlike the other clones where it's just sort of, oh, there's the one clone. If you can flicker it, that's good. But it doesn't really do anything else besides just enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature. This enters the battlefield and it just keeps giving you more value each upkeep unless your opponents can deal with it. And that is a big reason why it made this list. And I sort of felt like it's kind of fallen off a bit. Not as many people are recognizing it for its potential and its value like they used to. Just a spectacular clone. Number 7 is Bounty of the Luxa. Kind of alternate between getting the mana on your first main phase. So you get that combination of 3 mana, the colorless blue and then green mana, which is pretty cool because, hey, more mana never hurts. It's good for control. It's good for creature decks. I could definitely see this in a ton of options in the format. Think of your Sylvan libraries, your Phyrexian arenas. Again, it's just going to give you advantage either way, and it is kind of cool that it alternates. It's a little annoying if you don't like that, but still a very valuable card in a lot of decks now that I don't think enough people are recognizing it for its potential in the format. Number 6 is Thrasios, Triton Hero. He's only 2 mana, so if you choose to have him as a commander option, he is going to be easy to constantly bring out there again. Just 2 more mana. Not bad at all. You have an activated ability here of formatted to scry 1, and then you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, you get to draw a card. So that right there, if you have infinite mana, you can pretty much win the game. Now, this is also given if you have a Laboratory Maniac, something like that, to also win, but still shouldn't be too difficult. In these colors, you have the Palinchron Deadeye Navigator combo on the ready. You also have green there to tutor as well. Cool thing though is that he's also a partner commander option. So if you want to throw this into other partner 4-color decks, I've seen a lot of different combinations. I've seen Sultai, Bruise, I've seen 4-color Bruise, just a ton of potential here, and it does very much seem like this is good for control. It's exactly what you want. You want to get more card draw, you want to get more mana on your side. Never a bad thing to get that. And again, the same thing with Keitel, but I think that he sees a lot more play now and he's a lot more of a sure thing in a deck. It's just going to net you so much advantage over the course of a game. That's exactly what you want in control, and I think that he works out pretty well in control as well as just for comboing out. Pretty cool option. Number 5, I have Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library if it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell's, you get to cast it without paying its mana cost, and if you don't cast it, you put it in your hand. So it works out pretty well with the Cascade decks. I think the whole getting advantage off the top of your deck is pretty funny in these colors. I like throwing her into a Yidris build that just abuses Cascade triggers. I think it's pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, abusing cast triggers is pretty ideal with this commander option. I don't know if I would make her a commander necessarily. She's not terrible as one, but she works out pretty well as one of the 99. And for a very similar reason to Thrasios, I think that she works out pretty well with control builds. Getting more advantage over the course of a game from the top of your deck is ideal in these colors. It's all about mana ramp. It's all about just getting more advantage in your opponent. So she's pretty simple, just going to give you more stuff. It works very similar to Cascade, as I said before, and that's why I love her, and that's why she's on this list. Number 4 is Kruphix, God of Horizons. You have no maximum hand size, which is a very positive thing to have on cards, very underrated. However, the best thing about him is the fact that whenever your mana would empty your mana pool, it just becomes colorless instead. So you don't have to worry about, oh, well, if I tap out, am I just going to be wasting my mana? Nope. It just turns colorless. So if you have huge X-costed spells, something like a Mind Grind or an Exsanguinate, you can just take advantage of all of that. I wouldn't say very similar to Omnath, Locus of Mana, and just giving you a ton of advantage to work with. I feel that the green mana, though, it is a little bit more important, and just getting colorless mana, it's not too fantastic unless you can abuse something like Eldrazi's or X-costed spells or just mana sinks in general. Works out pretty well with Thrasios, though, so that's an upside. But yeah, just a very cool god, and I think all the gods are spectacular in Commander for the most part. There are some that kind of don't do enough, but this one is definitely one of the better ones because saving up all your mana is spectacular in the format, and there are a lot of decks that want to do that, a lot of creature-based decks that love this guy, and at worst he's just an indestructible enchantment that just sits on the field waiting to be taken advantage of. Number 3, we have Bring to Light, one of those converge cards from Battle for Zendikar. And the whole 5 mana there, if you choose to use 5 different colors of mana to cast this, then you get to search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than equal to the number of colors of mana you spent to cast it. And then you exile it, and then you get to cast it without paying its mana cost. So right there, depending on what you're going to be playing, you don't have to worry about that spell's converted mana cost, which is very refreshing compared to other tutors, even Demonic Tutor, where it doesn't let you cast it for free pretty much. You do have to cast it there, though, and you do have to reveal it because it is specific towards type of card that you search up, so that is a huge downside. But the fact is, you get to basically pay 5 mana to get something out there, and you don't have to invest any more mana into it. So you could search up something that is CMC 5 at best. In total, you're costing spells that in total are 10 mana, but you're really only paying 5 mana for it, so that is spectacular. Or even if it's anything less, it's still going to be worth it because you don't have to pay for that spell's converted mana cost. So that is a huge upside. And the cards you're allowed to search up there, as I said before, I mean, creatures, instants, and sorceries, a lot of different things you can search up for, and a lot of win cons that fall underneath that 5 CMC mana cost. So even if it is just Simic, searching something up that's CMC 2 or less is still pretty decent. Then number 2, we have Azuri, Claw of Progress, one of, if not the most popular commander options in these colors. He is spectacular with Infect, and I think that he is well known as one of the Infect commanders. I know Skithrix is the ultimate one, but when you have Blighted Agent, stuff like that you can just dump a ton of +1/+1 counters on, they're unblockable, and you're just going to swing in, knock players out of the game with Infect. I think that's hilarious, but you can also combo off with Sage of Hours with the whole extra turn, remove the counters. It only gets bigger, the amount of experience counters you get, and I think the whole experience counter mechanic thing is just hilarious to take advantage of. Not too terribly complex of a commander, not really my favorite one, just a spectacular combat-based deck in these colors. There are a ton of synergies with +1/+1 counters, even aside from the whole combat-based strategy. I mean, you can synergize with Experiment Crash if you want to, you can synergize with other cards that do similar things, such as with activated abilities. I know I just mentioned Sage of Hours. There are some other cards that you can synergize with as well, such as Fathom Mage. Whenever you get +1/+1 counters on her, you get to draw cards. So I think there's a ton of different ways that you can synergize with +1/+1 counters, aside from just the typical swing in with Infect or some unblockable creature to deal a massive amount of damage. I think that's quite funny. Then number 1, we have Master Biomancer. This guy can get out of hand pretty quickly, and once he does, it's just a pain to get rid of, because all your creatures are entering the battlefield with +1/+1 counters equal to his power. Well, I just mentioned a commander option that takes advantage of that in Azuri Claw of Progress. Put a ton of +1/+1 counters on him. He's going to trigger the experience counters, and each of your other creatures that enter the battlefield are entering the battlefield with that many +1/+1 counters. This is quite ridiculous. In any token-based strategy, let's say his power is something even like 4, even if it's just 4. Each of your tokens, just think about your 1/1 little tokens that you can get off of just ETBs off of something, maybe not 1/1 specifically, but hey, Avenger of Zendikar, that's a ton of little plant tokens. You're going to get, what, 4 +1/+1 counters on all of those tokens? That is insane. And if you can only get more and more +1/+1 counters on Master Biomancer, that number's going to keep going up. So if you have something that just keeps popping out these tokens, they're going to keep getting bigger. I would compare it to something like a Cathar's Crusade that can get out of hand pretty quickly. Because in a very similar way, just getting more and more creatures out there with high power and toughness, just for having one permanent out there that's putting in all the work. He puts in a ton of work into the majority of the decks that I put him into. Just a fantastic one of the 99 in these colors, and that's why he's my number 1 favorite card in Simic. So anyway guys, that was my top 10 best Simic colored cards in the Commander format list. Let me know what your favorites are. Let me know if there's anything that I left off the list that you were curious about. Anyway, you'll have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off.